So I just want to preface this with I'm a much better writer than I am speaker, but and I do have autism, so my speech patterns are a little bit strange sometimes. But I wanted to talk about my experience as a detransitioned woman, and I know that there's a lot of, I guess, controversy over that. Anyway, I know there's like a lot of contention about it, but it's my lived reality, so I thought it'd be important to speak on it. When I was a child, if you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would say a big ugly boy. I wouldn't say a fireman, I wouldn't say a teacher, I wouldn't say a policeman, I would say a big ugly boy. And that was my you couldn't that was the only answer you could get from me when I was a toddler of what I want to be when I grow up. And I remember seeing the movie Mulan when I was little and thinking, like, that's so cool, that's so lucky that she got to be a boy. And I remember asking my mom if I could cut my hair short. She said no. So yeah, I come from a very, very Christian background. My family's very, very religious and always has been, and very, very conservative and always has been. So I was raised very much like a little girl. I was expected to help with things around the house. I was treated very differently from my older brother. I was given, girls' toys to play with. When I would get really excited when I got to go to a play date at a boy's house because I knew he had all the boy toys and I had all the girl toys. I would play like war with my Barbies. I'd play with them more like GI Joes. Um, I was uh, I was really sort of enamored with the idea of being a boy my entire life. In the second grade, I almost had to cut off all my hair because I got a hairbrush stuck in it trying to curl it, like, because I wanted to look like Heath Ledger in The Patriot. Because I saw, oh, that's how a boy can look with long hair. Um, and I remember wanting to emulate that. Um, and Without getting too deep into any triggering stuff, I went through some sexual abuse as a child. Um, it was older boys that had access to me. And It was, a couple different perpetrators throughout my life. But um, one of the things that would happen when I was in kindergarten was the boys would touch my chest. I was always a little fat kid. I had tits. And the boys would touch my chest, and I thought they were making fun of me for being fat, but they were molesting me. Um, so I've always had dysphoria about my chest. I remember I used to hate standing with, when I was changing my clothes, I would always change my pants and keep my shirt on, um, and then change because I hated being without a shirt, because I hated the way my chest was. And this is as early as, first, second grade. I developed pretty early. I probably started developing like actual puberty breasts and stuff like that around third grade. Um, but I, uh, I remember, one of my favorite movies was Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, and there's a character in it, the baker, who's a fat man, and in the movie, he just wears like he's only wearing bottoms, he's not wearing top, and so you can see his chest. And I remember like looking at my chest and thinking like, oh no, I look like the baker um, from Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, because I hated the fact that I had fat tissue on my chest. Um, my actual, I was sort of always more of a masculine child. I liked horror, I liked gore, I liked scary, bloody things and violent things and action. Um, and uh, my mom wasn't particularly supportive of it because she was very like no violent toys in the home, no violent cartoons. So she didn't like that I watched like Dragon Ball Z when I was a little kid. I wanted to be Dragon Ball Z for Halloween one year, and she had me try on a costume that she knew would be a couple sizes too small and told me it was the only one. And I don't believe it was the only one. I think she just wanted me to be a princess for Halloween like every other little girl. But uh, around 5th or 6th grade, I got started being told that I was bad at being a girl. Because I'm autistic, I didn't socialize like other girls socialized. I didn't pick up on the social intricacies. Boys were a lot more straightforward. So I related to them because their social codes were a lot less strict. And also, I just related to them more. But when I was when I was growing up, my last name starts with the word man. So people, my last name's for all intents and purposes, let's pretend my last name was Manly, and they would call me, oh, Blister's Manly, Blister's Manly, and like accentuate that part of my name. They would make fun of me for wearing just sort of t-shirts and jeans. I didn't like girls' clothes. They were very constrictive. They were itchy. They were roughly. They were uncomfortable. And so I was kind of made fun of a lot for not being good at being feminine. And I was told, there was like rumors went around the school that I was really a boy, and stuff like that, just like nasty 7th grade girl stuff. I was picked on for being heavy, and I was picked on in retrospect because I was autistic, but because I wasn't feminine. And I tried really hard to be feminine, and I started realizing that I was growing up to be an ugly woman, and that terrified me. The idea of being an ugly woman absolutely petrified me. Because ugly women are treated like absolute shit. And I knew that even as a child, that I was going to be treated poorly as a woman. So I guess that's just a little bit of background. But I first, I guess, discovered transgenderism, or the idea of it, through a pro-ana forum. I had an eating disorder, and I was part of a pro-ana group, and there was an older trans woman who was also a meth addict and a pedophile, who groomed me into sending pictures and stuff like that, but was the first person to tell me that, like, hey, maybe you're a boy, maybe you're just a trans boy, and that's why you feel so shitty as a girl. And so, this was an adult that I trusted, and that was definitely the first I thought of it, but I thought, maybe, and I was maybe 13 or 14, so I was just starting to realize that I wasn't straight. I remember I was watching National Lampoon's Vacation with my cousins, and locked myself in the bathroom and had an absolute crying meltdown because I thought, because I realized I was attracted to the like bimbo-y girl in the red car, that I found her sexually attractive, and I remember being absolutely petrified about that. And because again, like I said, my family's very conservative, so I breached the subject a little bit with my mother in my late teens. I came out, I said, I think I'm bisexual and I think I'm transgender, and she said, no, you're not. And that was that. No, I'm not. But I felt better about being attracted to girls as a boy than I did as a girl. I felt like it was more okay for me to like boys and girls if I was a boy. So that definitely played a major role. But this online predator helped me pick out a name. And then within about a year, my best friend, was also coming out with some gender stuff. He still identifies as trans, and I totally support him. But it was kind of something we did together. It was something we bonded over, so that further cemented it as a part of my identity. So I had the chest dysphoria from being molested. I had, just general dysphoria about being seen as a female, especially as not one of the hot girls. Because if I couldn't be a hot girl, I didn't want to be a girl. And I realized boys my size, my age, were treated like normal people. Were treated, it was okay for them to be the way that they were. So, I thought, I look more okay as a boy, and I cut my hair in 11th grade. I cut all my hair off. I started wearing this big green flight jacket. I'll see if I can throw up a picture of it because I looked like a little punk. I was very into like the whole punk rock thing. And I would hang out up at the mall, and everybody at the mall knew me as a boy. A couple people didn't even know that I was born female. Whereas around school, I was just kind of known as like the butch. But I definitely experienced what they call gender euphoria. I would get really happy when somebody would mistake me for a boy. I would get really happy when somebody would call me he, and really uncomfortable when somebody would call me she. But when I was in my teens, I did want to medically transition, but my family doesn't really have money. I didn't have the support of my family, and I have a deathly fear of needles. Petrified, absolutely petrified, cannot deal with them. So the idea of hormone injections was kind of off the table. But yeah, so I was very active in the LGBT community as a teenager. I was the vice president of the Gay Straight Alliance, and I would always lie to my mom and tell her that the field trips for it were for a writing club, or that I was in a writing club. Meanwhile, fuck her, I would never be in a writing club. I hate other writers. That's hell beyond hell. But yeah, I just realized I wasn't gonna get what I wanted as a female, and being male was now put to me as an option. And so I lived pretty, I mean, I was closeted at home, but I wasn't really, like, my mom would always cry that I wouldn't wear girl clothes. But yeah, my mom didn't really like my fashion. She didn't really like that I was, you know, she would always say, you're such, I have such a pretty daughter, I have such a pretty daughter, why do you try to make yourself look ugly, or why do you try to make yourself look different? And it was because I felt like I couldn't compete with the other girls at being a girl, but being a guy had pretty much zero fucking requirements other than existing, so I could do that just fine. This is all over the place, so I'm probably gonna have to go back and edit it. But as my eating disorder progressed, well, first of all, being trans definitely fueled my eating disorder. I was obsessed with trying to make my chest and my curves go away. I bound unsafely. I used a corset that I stole from a Kohl's, from like the lingerie section of a Kohl's, and I used that as a binder. But I've always had a very large chest, even with a binder, you could tell. So I was never happy with my body. And then I started to abuse amphetamines, and that made me very slim. That made me very, yeah, that was the only time in my life that I was ever skinny. And I thought, you know, maybe I could try, you know, being the pretty boy, and you know, boys can wear dresses. I hated wearing dresses. I hated being seen in dresses. I remember I would go to Sweet 16s and be mortified. I would feel like I was being like forced to cross dress. Like I really felt mortified in dresses. I didn't go to my senior prom because I didn't want to wear a dress. And so I guess going on to college, I went to an art school. I was very, very, the way I'm going to describe it is they, them. It was, everybody was some kind of they, them, mo guy. There was nobody, no, there was like 5 cis people. Like, everybody was obsessed with being queer. I hate that word. But yeah, so I started branching out a little bit more with, well, I can still be a boy and grow my hair out a little bit. I can still be a boy and wear dresses. I can still be a boy and wear makeup. Because, you know, especially part of the whole punk thing, it was part of my like self-expression, and I was one of those kids whose like entire identity was being punk. So I very much wanted to other myself, and I never had a good relationship with my body. I self-harmed from the age of 11 to it's still currently something I struggle with. Like I said, I've had I've had every eating disorder on the fucking spectrum. I've been a binge eater, I've been bulimic, I've been a restrictor, pretty much everything. But I finally got to this place in college where I was comfortable. I didn't make people use different pronouns for me. I just went with whatever pronoun they went with. And sometimes they'd call me he, and sometimes they'd call me she, and there were different people who thought I was a girl and people who thought I was a boy, and people who went through my Facebook and saw pictures of me when I was even more masculine, and condescendingly told me how well I passed as a girl, not knowing I was biologically female. Shit like that. And I became really involved with a couple student organizations, and through that I met my partner, B, who I love so much, and he's so supportive of me and of my dysphoria, and whatever I want to do or want to be called, he's like willing to do that, which is, I think, really special. But I kind of remember I was at the height of my amphetamine abuse, and I liked the way I looked as a girl then. I thought, okay, now I'm skinny, now I have a better body, now I like the way I look as a girl, so I can be a girl, and I don't have to be a boy. And then so I mostly just told people I was non-binary, because it was just too much to get into. But like, he called me his girlfriend. I wasn't his boyfriend. But it was also, I was very much different from the other girlfriends with how they interacted with the group of male friends. I was like one of the bros. Adjustment. So yeah, I was kind of in my early 20s. I finally decided, I give up. In a lot of ways, I got dejected. I got disillusioned or disenchanted, I guess, with the community through being part of it. I realized that trans guys really get thrown under the bus by a lot of trans activism. I've been incarcerated, I've been institutionalized, and I realized, if things kept going the way they were going, if I got locked up, I was going to be, and I was doing some pretty serious criminal shit at the time. But the statute of limitations is passed on that. But it was going to jail was a very real possibility for me. So I thought about it, and I thought, no, I don't want to go to a man's jail. I'd get raped. That's just the simple fact of it, is I'd get raped. Finally comfortable with my body, or comfortable-ish with my body, to the point where I didn't mind anymore people calling me she, her, because I felt like I was good enough to be a woman then. And yeah. And I found out I was autistic, so that answered a lot of questions for me about why I didn't socialize like other girls, why I was so different from the other girls, why I didn't want to do makeup like the other girls wanted to do, I didn't want to wear the clothes the other girls wore. I realized that was my autism. And so shortly after that, a friend of mine linked me some radical feminist blogs that talked about some of the reasons that women are prone to gender dysphoria, and I ticked all the boxes. I started reading a lot of Andrea Dworkin. She's still one of my favorite writers, but the more I read about patriarchy and the constraints put on girls, the more I realized why I didn't want to be a girl. And that it was okay to be a girl like this, that it was okay to be a girl with big, gory crossed t-shirts and short hair and unkempt eyebrows and no makeup. So I realized I could be myself and still be a girl. That there wasn't a right way to be a woman, that I wasn't, I didn't fail out of that category, that I was still allowed, that I was allowed to be me. And for the first time in my life, I felt my dysphoria go away. I felt at peace with myself and my gender. I it's still really hard for me. I still have a lot of strong dysphoria, but you know, I don't cringe anymore when people. I still cringe when people say she, her. It still actually does get to me a little bit, but only because for so long I associated that with such negative feelings. But from the time I was a little kid, I perfectly fit the narrative of a little trans boy growing up. I perfectly fit the narrative of somebody who would have been helped by transition, but it didn't help me. All it did was make me feel worse and make me feel more worried about passing, and I was more concerned with my appearance and passing as a boy than I ever was with my appearance as a female. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that's sort of the long and short of it. I'm open to questions. Yeah.